What's up, guys? I'm Dr. Dani LaMartina here. I am just under 4 weeks out, about 3.5 weeks out from my first Olympia. Gonna be training push today. We're getting to the point in prep where I'm gonna have to pull back volume a little bit, maybe make a couple movement swaps, but I'll talk to you session. As always, so much of this is for you guys. So if you have any questions about what I do today, any questions about cues, please drop comments below. Remember to like, subscribe, share this with your friends, and remember to check out Troponin.com for more detailed information on a lot of this. I am definitely going to need to make a couple changes today. One of the big changes I'm going to make is that as fatigue creeps up, my ability to stabilize decreases. That's really common. So I've been dumbbell pressing. It's my second movement. My output on here already, my warm-ups feels a little bit nerfed today. So I'm probably going to go to Smith press. It's my second movement, but we'll see how things go. One big thing I see a lot of people do is they get deep into prep as they start just kind of phoning it in on sets. One thing you're going to see me do today that I think is really important is making sure that I'm maintaining intensity. So I'll probably drop volume by 15-20%, maybe a little bit more, and just do what I need to do to be able to maintain intensity and really push hard. It's super important to get the quality work in rather than just, phoning in and saying you got some work in. Be intentional with it. One other thing I see a lot of people do during prep is focus on staying strong. While that's important, I think it's really important to drive a hybrid of both strength as well as pump work. Remember that so much of what you're trying to do right now is maintain mass, making sure you're getting blood to the muscles. So you're going to see me really trying to contract the muscles as best I can today rather than just moving from point A to B. Coming from a strength athlete background, that's very difficult. My ego likes to get wrapped up in things. I really pride myself on being strong, but I tend to find as I get deeper and deeper into prep, it becomes more important to be more intentional with movements. I tend to find that as a smaller person, it becomes more important for me to really own my setup and change my position to hit what I want to hit rather than looking at what I see a lot of other bigger dudes do. So like I watch Dave set up, it's a little bit differently from how I'm going to set up. If I want to hit a little bit more chest and shoulder here, given the angle of this machine, I actually need to scoot my butt forward just a little bit. So one other thing that I look at when I'm looking to maintain intensity in a session is every implement's going to lend itself to a different intensity technique. When I say intensity technique, I mean anything that's going to extend your set and give you more more reps and closer proximity to failure. Something like a rest pause is going to be different than a drop set or double drop set or myo reps. In this particular machine, because it's so top heavy, meaning for me, my triceps are going to give out like at the mid-range of the transition before I give out of the bottom. It definitely makes it a little bit harder to hit a lot of reps at a heavy weight. So rather than something like a rest pause, I prefer either a variation of a drop set where I have to throttle the load because of my triceps, or what I would call a crisp pause set, which is something that Dave and I have been using from our coach Chris Edmonds. He handles my training. Justin obviously handles my nutrition. But the crisp pause is basically a rest pause set, and then once you're done with the rest pause, you drop 40-50% of the weight and just keep going until you can't. It's a great way to get both that kind of top end strength work in addition to a lot of the pump work. I'm having a really hard time getting a pump at all right now. I think for safety, I'm going to set up for a double drop or triple drop and see how it feels. And if it feels like I can do a crisp pause, I'm going to pivot to that kind of mid-set. The more advanced you get as an athlete, the better you get at kind of judging these things kind of mid-set. So it's good to have a plan, but be willing to pivot. I'm actually going to take the same weight, but you're going to see I'm moving the change plates around so that when I strip, if I need to, it's just done at different percentages. I tend to find that during prep, you want to be efficient with your sessions, but you also want to take enough rest between sets to get what you need to out of your set. I also tend to find that the longer you sit, the more it gives you an opportunity to realize how tired you are. It's really easy to lose steam and lose momentum that way. So you're going to notice that today I take just enough rest to hit what I need to hit, but other than that, I try and keep it moving. I've got much more cardio to do at home. I did my first session of 60 minutes of fast stairs this morning. I've got another 20 minutes and then another walk tonight, which doesn't sound like a lot, but right now my feed is very low. I'm eating 25 carbs pre and post workout, and that's about it. All their meals are veggies and protein. So energy is really limited, which means I gotta be efficient. Ha! And we just saw what happens. I'm gonna pivot this from the rest pause or crisp pause to double drop. This is probably still gonna be heavy. I might get 4 or 5 here, but we'll see. Wow. Whew. Alright, come on, let's go. Here. Whew. One more. Oh, yep. Let's go. Ha. Ah. I was gonna Smith press today. Both Smiths are taken. So I'm probably gonna go to dumbbell press instead, just so I can keep things moving. Pull the weight back a little bit, maybe add a micro pause or something. Again, at this point, as much as I wanna think about staying strong, I think the best thing I can do is get a stimulus, get as much blood to the muscles as I can, come into the set with intent, and just be ready to pivot. One of the good and also challenging things about training in a gym where there are a lot of athletes getting ready for the same show with different coaches, that you're kind of wondering if you are where you need to be. So I was telling our camera guy before we started that our coach Justin's methods usually have a high day with a cheat meal at the end of the week on Saturday to fill you out a little bit. But the rest of the week's pretty aggressive. So I always come in on like a Monday and I feel like I'm too full. I see someone like Sean over there looking like death, and I'm like, I feel like death, but I'm a little bit fuller than I thought. But I compare where I was, 3 days ago, and it's way different. So just really important to continue to trust your coach. Remember to stay in your lane. Don't look at anyone else. It's so easy to start comparing. I do it all the time. I look at what other girls are with their conditioning and everything, and I just have to remember that you're with your coach for a reason. And I trust Justin wholeheartedly. He took me to a pro win, my 4th prep with him. So obviously he knows what he's doing, but it can be really easy to start second guessing. My shoulders are cranky today. I spent the morning doing this on the Stairmaster and sitting at my computer working. I tried to do a little PT before I started, but I'm just getting to the point where everything's just dry. So I'm gonna do the best that I can and rely on the good juju. 55 felt like 65s today. It's hard not to have a good day when you got people like Jay over here. Usually during prep I kind of go into a hole. This year I've really tried to lean into the community more, and the guys from Better Bodies team, the family here, Destination, man, it's been such a game changer for me. I tend to be really, really introverted. I like to come in and shut up and do my work, put my head down and get it done. It's been such an enormous blessing to be here. I think that it's really important, no matter who you are, what your personality type, to find people who are going to go with you. There's that saying that says if you want to go fast, go low, and you want to go far, go together. So much of me getting to the Olympia this year is because I was able to surround myself with people who believed in me and pushed me and saw a bigger picture than I could have seen for myself. So it's really easy to just isolate. There's a time and a place for it. There's also a time and a place to lean into the people around you, know that they want your success just as much as you want it for yourself. There are a few things that make me feel more like myself. So when I've got chalk all over my hands. I'm gonna take these for 2 or 3, and if it feels like I need to do my top set for the day, I'm gonna just keep going. If it feels like after a couple I can take 80s, I'm gonna take 80s, but we'll see. Again, I really wanted a more stable implement today. One of the things the literature consistently shows is that as systemic fatigue increases, co-contraction of stabilizing muscles across joints tends to decrease. So, especially again at a joint like the shoulder where there's a lot of movement because it's a rotational joint, that stability becomes much more important. So, we'll see. Man, I screwed myself on the kick up there. I should have gotten a spot, but that's one of those small things that goes a long way on something like a dumbbell press. If that first kick up to get the first rep in a position is inefficient, it can really screw your whole set. So I should have gotten a spot, but that's all right. I'm going to drop down quite a bit. I didn't feel like I had a great connection there. There was a lot of moving A to B. I'm happy with the control, but I think if I really want to drive better connection, to be better served to pull the weight back, be more intentional with it. It's so far off from my best, it's really hard to be okay with that. But I'm also happy in that if I can maintain this for right now, when I come into my rebound, my soft tissues are going to be acclimated. I should be able to grow a ton because I spent time allowing my joints and soft tissues to get used to the range of motion. I'm going to get used to stabilizing even under fatigue. So you can always use the last couple of weeks of prep as a setup to your rebound as well. I have never had anyone regret taking weight light. I've had a lot of people regret overshooting and taking too heavy. So I'm going to take my own advice. And rather than taking 65, I'm going to take 60s and just make them as perfect as I can. And you just saw the fatigue from that incline press, the machine. I just saw that kick in. So the session order really matters. Depending on where you're limited and what holds you back, for me, the transition from midpoint to the top, more tricep related. If I fatigue that first, I'm going to be artificially limited on a lot of my pressing. Now, something that requires a lot of stability, that's not necessarily a bad thing because it's going to force me to throttle the load to where I can stabilize. Use things like tempo to make it harder, right? So if I'd switch the order, I'd be taking my dumbbell press heavier, but I'd be missing the overload on the top end for the incline press. Now the incline press is going to be a strength potentiator for me. So I want stronger triceps. For me, especially in my off season, like I want a really big bench because I'm a meathead. So I want to make sure I'm bringing up that weak point with my bodybuilding work. I'm going to do one more set here and pull out some overhead pressing and probably pull out one set of a flat press. I feel like I'm getting more out of this than I am a flat press. Yesterday was a low day for me, and I start the day with 80 minutes of fasted stairs, and then I have to take another 8,000 steps on top of that on 0 carbs. Other than maybe some veggies and protein, so I'm already pretty depleted. We're pivoting again. Everything I want to use is used right now, and again, for the sake of efficiency, so that I'm more cardio. I have my regular work day, plus some other stuff I have to get done today. If you're not one of the bodybuilders who gets to like not do a lot during your day other than like train and your cardio, it's a little bit easier to be more relaxed with your training, but if you have a regular job or you run your own business, you have to be super efficient. So I'm gonna pivot. I'm gonna do some overhead pressing. I'm going to be gassed out really quickly. That's okay. At this point, it's gonna maintain mass, and I'm gonna get on to my metabolic work, and it'll be good. Yeah. Session order and where you are in your year matters. Session order is going to influence your intra-session fatigue. Intra-session fatigue, meaning how fatigued certain muscle groups get within your session, is almost always going to be one of the limiting factors on how much you can push a movement. My triceps, because I have a long humerus, are mechanically disadvantaged. I've got long arms in general, long forearm. So I'm already fatigued here, which means I'm probably going to pull back weight from where I am in my off season a ton. My off season, it is not uncommon for me to have 2 plates and change on here. Today I'll be lucky to hit probably a plate for sets of like 10 to 12. I'm going to hit 2 sets and move on. And I think the person whose machine were you on here? Yeah. Do you mind if I work in with you? Yeah, awesome, thank you. I think people get like really dramatic about whether or not the equipment they want is available. It's not hard to ask people if you can work in with them. Almost everyone in the gym, we're all here to succeed at whatever we're doing. We all want to see each other succeed. You don't have to be weird about it. You don't have to have this like me against the world mentality. Yes, be relentless in chasing your goals, but that doesn't mean you have to like walk around seeing everyone as an antagonist towards what you're trying to do. It's not hard to be nice. Overhead machine presses are always interesting to me because of the line they put you in. A lot of people don't get a lot of side delt when they're dangling their body, so they almost get like upper pack and front delt. When I go to set up my next set, I'll show you what I mean. For me to actually hit side delt here, I have to be very, very intentional about driving out to the side. So if I set up in a way where I feel strong, I'm going to be hitting a lot of upper pec, a lot of front delt. And that's going to be here. For me to hit a little bit more side and front delt, I have to really think about driving out to the side and almost bring my torso forward a little bit. So take my sternum and ribcage, bring forward just a hair. Now when you fatigue, you can go into mechanical drop set and find that strong angle and crank out one or two more. Spam. But you could see how just that little change on body position is going to, number one, bias where I want to work, and number two, set me up to a mechanical advantage or disadvantage for pure strength versus making the muscle work. Thanks. I tend to find with my front double, I like to use some overhead pressing in because for me, my front delts really kind of carry that. And even on my back double, to be able to come back and have that front delt pop, it's not a strong suit of mine. So anything I can do to develop that area, even if it's not perfect, per the biomechanics gods, it's always got to come back to whatever your goals are. I was just saying, it's like I said, you got good people around. Oh. I was talking earlier about how like this year, like for Olympia prep, it's been a lot easier for me just like actually leaning into the community rather than thinking I have to like, do this all the time.
Yeah.
So this time of
place. But I mean, there's those moments too where like you need to be by yourself, you need to fucking.
And the people who support you are going to understand that. The people who support you are going to say, put your head down and get the work done.
Yeah, don't fucking talk to me. Yeah. I'm proud of you. You're doing fucking awesome.
Thanks.
But I'm always here for you if you need me.
Thank you. Appreciate you. So for me personally, I like, after doing a lot of pressing, which again really kind of drives my nervous system's attention, all these front muscles, and given the fact that I live life in my computer here, before I go into my side delts, I like to kind of recalibrate the system and getting a little bit more proprioception or awareness on the back side of me, more rear delts to kind of get things to open up. You can think about every movement we do, if you think about the pendulum of our brain's awareness between the front side and the back side of us, many of us kind of live life more attuned to the front side. And the more you live on this end of the pendulum, the harder it can be to really allow muscles to contract where they need to. If you live here, shortened on this side of the pendulum, it's really hard to get things to actually open up. So I like to kind of recalibrate, drive some proprioception in the back half, and then go back into side delts. I have really, really struggled to develop my rear delts, so they have come a long way, and I'm so grateful for it. You'll notice in my setup today that there are a couple of things I do. Number one, I keep a little protraction. Number two, I make sure my elbows stay up. If they start to aim down, I start to kind of get more trap involvement. So I like to keep my elbows rotated up, driving out from the pinky. And you're going to notice my range of motion. I try really, really hard just to keep up my rear delt, not allow my back to take over too much. Now for everyone, that's a little bit different. Some people can get great rear delt development and hit full range of motion. I tend to find that if you're someone who has a really flat thoracic spine or flat rib cage or is really trap dominant, like me, many years of deadlifting, you have to be a little bit more focal with what you're trying to actually hit. It's a small muscle group, which means it's very easily overpowered by larger ones, so key in on it. Mostly in the lengthen range there. I'm going to hit a little shorten range.
But he was very back. That non big back way.
I just love when you get the people who don't actually have any sort of delt development talking about how pull aparts aren't going to hit their delts. And they're true in that there's a lot of kind of co-contraction or co-recruitment of other muscles like traps, and if you're not careful with your setup, that's all you're going to get. But if you notice, what I did on that set was I took the first 20 slow and controlled, really held the isometric, forced myself into that shortened range, which after hitting more of that kind of bottom 2/3 on the reverse pec deck, getting in that shortened range and holding it's going to drive increased proprioception. But proprioception is not only important for driving a good stimulus within the session, but it's also going to make it easier and easier to refine that muscle going forward. So if you have a lagging body part, yes, pay attention to whether or not you can feel it, but recognize that part of the benefit of feeling it isn't always within the session. It's the development that happens afterwards as your brain gets better and better at connecting with that muscle. I always hate having my rear delt stuff filmed because I am definitely that person who struggles to get their position. Like if you look at my shoulders, the way this ball and socket sits is not favorable to delt development. So I always hate being a demo for something because I'm not the great demo, but the reality is that's what most of you guys watching, if you're watching this, it's probably because you feel like there's something missing in your training. So if you have questions, again, drop them below. I want to make sure I can answer them, and please know you're talking to a mechanic who's fixed and lives in a broken car and has had to troubleshoot. So if you watch a lot of my delt work, one of the things you'll see is that my wrists and my elbows move a lot. That's one of the reasons I have such a hard time developing my delts. I'm really small jointed, and I've had a couple of wrist injuries that has made my grip a challenge. So if I can't grip something and really lock in, you'll notice there's a lot of wrist movement and a lot of elbow movement. And if you watch, my shoulder changes position as those things happen. So as I go through range of motion, if I can't maintain a neutral wrist and neutral elbow, that's part of why I have a hard time getting my rear delts to develop. I've got something going on autoimmune that causes a lot of small joints to be extra inflamed. I'm starting to get these like cysts all over my wrists on both sides, which is not fun. It's really painful to grab anything right now. So you'll notice that I use straps for a lot of things because it eliminates the grip factor and allows me to really just focus on where I want to potential. One thing that I really try to do on a lot of my side delt movements is think about my posing. Not on every set, but on a lot of them. For me, my front relax is a little bit of a weak pose, and part of it is just because of my shoulder position, which is again a function of my rib cage. So I want to think about actually hitting my front relax as I go into a lot of these movements. You'll see at the end, I do an ISO hold with a band where I'm just really trying to get into that front relax and feel my delts get wide and feel myself take up space. I'm a smaller competitor, and I think when you're a small person on stage, you need to figure out a way to own your space and take up your space, and a lot of that comes into how you train, and there are little things you can do to help kind of give you that leg up too. So if you have a hard time developing delts, one of the things you can do to really kind of look at is pick video, slow it down, and look at what's changing in your hand, your elbow position. A lot of people know that they need to get wide and think about out, not up. What they don't realize they're doing is even as they pull out, they might be rotating just a little bit and biasing their front delt. So for me, one cue that I really like to think about is keeping my palms towards the floor. I actually internally rotate just a little bit because I know that even when I feel internally rotated, I'm really kind of neutral, and that lets me really drive wide, and that wide line is just going to hit more side delt. But again, a lot of this is going to be a function of how your shoulder sets. Again, if you're like me, and you have a hard time developing delts, a couple of things to look at. First is what's your elbow doing? Second is what's your wrist doing? And is your line of pull actually out and not just forward? I like using a lengthen range partial to help with that. It allows me to start forward and pull back a little bit. If you're someone who already lives a little bit forward, starting forward would allow you to pull back and get more attuned to your side and your delts a little bit. You know, walk straight and think about hitting your front relaxed. Delts are another one of those muscle groups that I think people get really hung up on, you know, progressive overload. And while I think progressive overload has time and place, something like delts that are going to respond really well to a lot of metabolic work, high rep work, blood volume work, you don't necessarily have to be, you know, doing more weight week to week. If you're trying to get a pump, keep the pump the goal. Especially if you're hitting other movements in your session with pure overload. I'm just trying to drive that really round, 3D look, almost that a lot of the science people are going to hate me for this, that like sarcoplasmic growth. Don't worry about, you know, taking heavier weight each week. Work on quality, work on connection, work on getting a pump. And remember that everything you do in the session prior to hitting the delt work is going to contribute to local fatigue in your unit. The deeper you get into prep, the more important it becomes. You start to lose your pump. You don't necessarily have the means to go and just recapture it. So don't force what isn't there. You know, work hard. If you think you can nail something, do it. But if you're losing it, you know, don't be afraid to pivot if you need to. One of the things with cables, if you're doing delt work, it's really easy to take it too heavy. I don't love this cable stack for delt work. I'm going to see if I can make it work. So I really like a cable Y raise for side delts. People kind of think it's more rear delt oriented, but if you set it up correctly, if you visualize where the muscle runs, you can actually hit it really well and get into the shortened range much better than you can with something like a traditional lateral raise. The only downside to it is, again, sometimes the cables can be a little bit too heavy, and you end up kind of pulling on your rotator cuff, overusing your trap, getting some weird stuff going on with your trunk. Like you'll see, I have a really hard time stabilizing my trunk with that. And so make sure you're starting across your body and you want to pull out and up, just like you're thinking out with a lateral raise. This is an out and up movement. And if you line it up correctly, you're really going to get a lot of side delt with that. I'm going to be doing a tricep superset here. I think one of the things that people focus too much on with triceps is doing it again exactly like an enchanter is going to. Your stability and how wide, how narrow your clavicle structure, all these things are going to influence your setup. Yes, there are certain key rules you want to follow. For example, you want to make sure your elbows aren't moving forward in the movement, but you're going to want to position yourself in a way that's going to allow you to get the best stretch and contraction on the triceps. For me, I like to be more leaning forward. I like to keep my elbows pretty tight to my side. A lot of that is because I don't have a lot of core stability. It's something that over the years of powerlifting, I became so back dominant that I lost a lot of my stability in the front side of me. Training triceps is one of those muscle groups that, like, yeah, there are smart ways to set up your things. And like, yeah, I'm a PC and doctor, but like, sometimes you just want to go in and lift weight. And you just want to go and get a pump, not worry about doing things perfectly. So I don't know, I think again, we've taken training so far in the cerebral side of things, and it's important. Biomechanics are super important, but at the end of the day, we're lifting weights. You should enjoy what you're doing. So this is one of those movements that I don't worry too much about making my setup perfect. I don't want to like deconstruct it so much. It's like, I want to work hard. I want to need a pump. I want to have fun with it. Don't ever lose sight of that. I have another upper body day that I do more single arm tricep movements, but usually by this point in my session, I'm kind of like, I just want to get done because again, I've got other things to do. And I need to pose a little bit before I leave here today too. So I have one more set. I'm going to pose for a sec and then go home, some cardio. Stay on the line. Me and my 3.5 rice cakes that get post-workout. So I am done lifting. I'm going to go pose for a sec. Nothing wild, but it's kind of interesting just to look at a lot of the stuff I talked about in my rib cage, how it comes out in my side poses, like my side tri in particular. My right rear delt and tricep are way bigger, but because my waistline and rib cage on that side are super funky, I have to hit on my side shots on my left, which is a little frustrating. So I'll go do that now. One of the big things I've really had to work on this year, just because I haven't been competing in bodybuilding all that long, and this is only my 4th prep. It's for the Olympia. So stage time is one of those things that I just haven't had a lot of. You know, and that kind of stage presence, that really kind of knowing your body, being able to manipulate your angles and hit everything just right. I don't come from a background of like cheer or dance or gymnastics or any of the stuff that a lot of the other physique competitors do. So I have to put a little bit more work into my posing. It's not something that I initially loved, but it's really grown on me, probably because the PT in me is a big nerd and likes looking at these things. But on my side poses here, I can control my left waistline a lot better because I'm better at rotating to my right, which makes it easier to actually close that down. On my right side, my right rear delt and tricep are quite a bit bigger, but my rib cage on that side isn't as controlled. It likes to stay forward. Whereas on my left, I can close that down a little bit better. So it's one of those things that I've really had to work a lot on. Most of it has to do with trunk rotation. If I just hit my front relaxed, you can actually see that my ribs like to sit this direction. One of the things you can look at is what's called your infrasternal angle, meaning where your ribs come together in the front. For a lot of us, I'm going to relax my abs for a sec. For a lot of us, it's either narrow or really wide. Those are two ways it can move. The other thing it can do is deviate. So it can deviate to the left or to the right. Which direction it likes to face is going to be a big influence on how you like to hit your side poses, or if you do something like a front double and you end up turning a little bit, it's going to change which direction you turn well. So infrasternal angle is one of those things that you can look at, especially with regards to creating the illusion, creating the shape that you want to on stage. And it's one of those things that I think as a PT, like having the physical therapy knowledge in the background has really helped me with that, because without that, I think I'd be sitting here going, okay, well, these sides don't look the same, what do I do? And the reality is, as people, as human beings, we're not put together symmetrically. We have a liver here below our diaphragm, we have a heart here above the diaphragm, and our left and right hemidiaphragms are not the same, and they attach to our spine, which means our spine is going to rotate one direction better than the other. So anytime you're asking for symmetry, you're putting a demand on the body that is going to, number one, not going to be able to be met, or two, you can meet it by creating more compensations and decreasing resistance to that area. A lot of people are really good at basically creating a super compensation, just extending everything. What you'll see with that is this infrasternal angle where they come together is really, really wide. A lot of the big super heavyweight guys, if you look at them, they've got that really, really wide infrasternal angle. Their ribs and where they come together in the front is kind of this like big angle. That's because what they've done is basically shove their center of mass forward and make their chest tall. A lot of us don't have that. We might be a wide angle, but we're still biased one way or the other. So just something to kind of keep in mind. It's more related to trunk rotation, the fact that we as human beings, we're not put together symmetrically. That's okay. Figure out how to milk it to work best for your body, and that'll help your posing quite a bit. All right, guys, thank you again for following along. And again, please remember that any questions you have, drop them below. I want to make sure you're getting information that you need, whether it's for training, rehab, posing, how all those things work together. Remember that you can like, subscribe, follow, and there's lots more of this information on teamtroponin.com. Otherwise, I'll see you at the Olympia.